This is Faith Over Breakfast, Season 2, Episode 42. Welcome to Faith Over Breakfast. This is Eric. I'm sitting across the table from Andy.
Hello.
He's pastor of Mission Church. I'm pastor of the Village.
We had Tucson, Arizona.
Tucson, yeah. I always forget to say Tucson, Arizona. We had a conversation about being pastors.
Yep.
Just kind of more a little raw, actually. It was good.
Yeah. And so it's not for pastors per se.
No.
It's not. It was more. I guess if you have a pastor, maybe you should listen to it.
Yeah, if you have a pastor, or if you're just human. I think there's a lot of humanness in this.
If you're not an animal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Oh, hey, Eric. How's it going?
Are we on live?
We're live.
All right. It's good to see you.
Is it?
It is.
I thought you were mad at me this morning.
I thought you were mad at me.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I thought you said, that's a stupid idea. I don't want to do that. That's how I read your text.
Texting's great. There was a whole bunch of stuff going on. Like, I don't even know what was going on during that time, but I was like fielding that and several other mildly stressful scenarios. And so,
were they mildly stressful pastoral scenarios, or were they mildly stressful family scenarios, or just
a little bit of everything?
So you kind of had it all rained at once.
Yeah, it was all, and the lines are not clear for me usually.
Yeah, that's the problem with being a pastor.
Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, because I'm a pastor, I'm a dad, I'm a husband, I'm a friend, I'm a boss,
right. Your children are and your wife are actually congregants, so you're their pastor doubled.
Yeah. I know. They just it's amazing how much they view me that way.
Yeah. Double pastor.
Yeah.
Thank you for being my double pastor.
I walk in and they're just like, speak the word to me. Tell me, what does God have to say?
Do you feel that you get that from your church in general? They look at you and they're like, speak the word to me right now.
It's all over the map. I feel like there are some who think that my thoughts on a thing are really, really, really important. And others I don't really know. Yeah. How about you? I mean, people bow to the floor when you walk in.
No.
Are you sure?
Yeah. I've never had anyone bow to me. Oh, I think
that's good.
I think, for one thing, like you were saying, the lines get blurred, in particular in our kinds of churches, when you keep deconstructing barriers, like stages and pulpits and offices and, when you remove a lot of form, all of a sudden, what are the physical and sort of metaphorical barriers between you and the congregation? They're not there anymore, so
right.
People view you as their buddy, or their friend that they really care about, and then also you're their pastor, and so you insert your life into some more intimate parts of their life as you wrestle with stuff, and then you're also the one teaching them about God.
Right.
So.
Yeah, and then, I don't know, maybe you're better at this than me, but also in our situation, there are people that I get together with more often than others, and I think there's a group of people who I tend to interact with, say on a Sunday when I'm at church more.
Right.
They're like a regular interaction there. And then there's those who maybe won't do that, but they'll want to have a meetup and get together and we'll talk more. And then there's those I just see on a pretty regular basis through various, whether it's the business here or we're just in the same coffee shop on a regular basis or something. And then there are those who go to our church who I personally, I don't see them as much, but I think they see Nick or Mike or somebody else. They spend more time talking to somebody else here at the church. So, there's just no way to handle a group that's bigger than 3 people, and really give that much time to everybody.
Yeah, I think you can't. I think 3 is probably a smaller. I mean, I really don't think once it gets over 10 that you can offer people kind of an equality of engagement.
Right.
But I mean, yeah, as you grow, usually when you're kind of in the lead pastor position of some sort, you are investing in your leaders, or you're trying to invest in your leaders.
Yeah.
And then you're investing in the people that you have a particular skill set, which is usually some kind of crisis or doing some kind of counseling that, can't be done in with other people because they don't have that skill set, or
you tend to meet up with people when they're going through some kind of big life decision.
Yes, big life decisions.
Yeah. And then you see that person more during that time often, and then it kind of isn't the same after that.
Yeah, and I think as you get bigger, even that you're hoping that your staff and other elders are trying to pick up some of that too, because you can't bear.
You just can't.
Right, because if one person is going through a big life thing, you can be there. If 5 people are going through a big life thing in a week, you can't be there for all 5 people or 5 groups of people. So you have to have some leadership structure to handle those things.
Yeah. Anyway, all that was to say, your text about that was amidst a whole bunch of other things. But I did, I was like, oh, okay. We're talking about, I don't know. That was the
right.
That was the impression I got, is okay. We're talking about, I don't know. So
maybe that's what we should title this.
I don't know.
I don't know. I actually was just thinking, why not just pull the veil back a little bit and let people into how you and I think about life and think about God and how we relate maybe on a more personal level with God. And then I was thinking, man, I think people want to know, like, what does Andy really long for his church? Like, what does he want to see in their growth? And what do you want to see your church in 5 years from now? What do you want it to look like? That kind of thing. What are your hopes and visions for things? And for me too. So that's kind of what I was thinking.
Well, what do you long for in your church?
I'm going to work us backwards. Yeah. What do I long for in my church?
Well, you're the one who's been thinking about this. This is new to me right this second.
I didn't actually think about it, except last time. Like, hey, like usually if we start talking, if you and I went out for coffee, I would say, hey, Andy, how you doing? And you'd say, hey, Eric, how you doing? And we'd talk about what's going on in our relationship. And then I'd say, hey, how's Mission Church going? What's the struggle? How can I pray for you?
What do you long for in the next 5 years?
Yeah, what do you want God to do in your church? How can I partner with that?
You're a good pastor if you ask those kind of questions.
All right, thank you. I'll take that. There are other elements of my life that I'm good at being a pastor.
Yeah. You're great.
Thanks, Andy.
You're welcome. So, I mean, what would you say? What are your how is your church already what you long for, and what would you hope for next?
Well, I think my church is what I long for, in the sense that it is committed to a vision, that there is a good sized core people who are committed to living in community together, trying to pursue the creative way of life, committed to walking alongside people who are hurting.
Yeah,
I think that's there. It's present. I see it, and it's not centered on me.
Yeah,
and that's cool. I like that. I think in the future, I really do long for my church to grow, in the sense of not for some ego thing. I don't want to go around and be like, oh, I have a 1,500,000 billion people church. I want to be, I think what the Village has to offer, I want it to be offered to more people. I want more people to experience the goodness that it has to offer. And so I hope that my community catches that vision a little bit more than it has, that it really longs to bring people in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't fear being overwhelmed. Because I think my church it's not that it's against being missional. They are. I think a lot of times they're just very, when it comes to their friends and their neighbors and they start processing that, they're like, oh my gosh, this would be a lot. Kind of to invite them into church and invite them into this community on both ends. I'm going to have to guide them in, and plus, wow, this is a lot to bring to my community to kind of walk people through. So I hope that they get excited about that, and that we move away from the need. I think there's a strong need in our community to fix things, like that we have to do it.
Oh, okay.
You know, so like that we can't invite people into this community and he will do the healing and we can join him.
Because it would be on us, and then that would be a lot of work. And
I think people are used to, and they're starting to feel what I felt for the first 10 years or so, which is getting the call at, 1 at night, or rushing over to someone's house because of the, emergency that all of a sudden they're having in their marriage and that kind of stuff. And people are like, oh, wow, this is like a full-time life thing.
Right.
And so I don't know. I think there's a little bit of that going on.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see.
So what do you long for? Like, what do you like about Mission Church? What, you guys, a year and a half in, 2 years?
More like 2.5.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
Into this merger.
Into the merger. Yeah. I feel very much like it's a church of friends. I think that, and there's the clickiness that can happen with that. But I think I would rather be dealing with that than what I experienced in the past, which was just kind of walking into a big room and not really knowing anybody and hearing a good talk and good music and then leaving, and those people really not being that integrated into my life. And I feel like these are my people who we're with in many ways, and sometimes that's hard because there's so much overlap, kind of like what I was alluding to earlier. That it's like, in a way, it's like, am I ever a pastor or am I ever not? And it's kind of an interesting thing. It's like, am I, because these people they know me well enough to know I'm not like so great. And I know them well enough to know that too. Right. And,
which is what people supposedly want. That's a deep and honest authenticity.
Yeah, right. And that's what we set out to do. And we set, like you said, not to have, this, kind of separation of like, I'm a professional clergyman and you are a lay person.
Right.
That all that just sounds strange and kind of repulses me to some degree. Even though there's probably something to recognizing the call of God. I think I struggle to relate to that idea, but I've come to believe that you need it, because otherwise, how could you ever sit under the teaching of any person unless you recognized that God had called them to something? Right.
No, I agree.
And so, but I love that. I love that it's a community of friends. I love the ways that we've pulled together to make things happen and to be there for each other and for others. I think the things that I love are also the things that I wish there was more of. I wish that we were. I think in a way our church is extremely sacrificial, and then in a way we're not. I think like what you're saying, like you have a church that's very oriented toward people in pain, but then they also realize how much that's going to cost and kind of recoil from it a little bit. And I think that we do that too. I think we're even our name, Mission, it's like this idea that we're out there, we're getting it done, and sometimes we do, and then other times I think we're just like tired of it, and maybe going, look, I just need some time. I need to be invested in. I need, or like that's just too much. It's too costly. I've got too much going on right now. I can't.
Yeah.
And I think that is a balance that needs to be struck, and we're human, and so we miss it. But I long for us to be. Sometimes I think we need to be sacrificial on the days we don't feel like it. And then sometimes when we feel like that's what would bring us meaning, we need to rest.
Right.
So it's just hard to decide when's when.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So, I feel that, and I'm sure, I think our church, I think I see that in the lives of other people too. So, yeah, I'm trying to work on when to say no and when to say yes. And, I blow it all the time. Like
how to set boundaries.
Yeah, like the other
Hard.
day at church, I was sick, on medication. There because I felt better in the afternoon, but my family had signed up for potluck, but then again, I'm also one of the people that's going to get talked to at the end of church, and I said I was going to leave early. Ended up being the last one to leave. Didn't help do the dishes. Hurt my wife in that. It was a rough day.
Yeah.
And so I was feeling all of that tension of like, I'm supposed to serve, I'm supposed to give my life. I did some of that today. I showed up, I stayed, I talked with people. I didn't do it to the person who was really hoping I would.
Yeah.
Bummer.
Well, that's definitely ripping the veil back a little bit.
There you go.
Saying into Andy.
Sure.
Yeah.
Trying. That's what you said we were doing.
Yeah, no, I think it's awesome. That's really cool. Well, probably not.
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm like,
So
that
cool,
was
Eric.
so cool. Like you had trouble with boundaries and where you create some conflict with your wife. That's awesome.
So cool.
It's just the best.
Right.
That's what we're going for in life.
Uh-huh.
Right. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So but I think that type of stuff, I guess what I'm saying is what I think that struggle is, you could say that's, I think, the struggle of our church too. Do I show up when I'm tired? Do I serve all night long or just part of the time?
Right.
How much am I going to give here? How much is just exhausting? When do I need to be recovering? When do I need to tell somebody, look, I just can't do it anymore? When do I need to go, no, it's Christ in me and I'm going to keep moving even though I don't feel like it? And I think those are tensions we're all in.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I've had to learn is being a pastor over the last 5-6 years is, how do I ask for help? How do I say I can't do this anymore?
Right.
How do I be vulnerable and weak? Because I am the person who's looked to be strong.
Right.
Even if people say, hey, you have permission to be weak, they still are saying, but we'd rather you be strong.
Yeah.
And because the burden is on them, and it's nice to be taken care of, and people long for that. So I, even asking for help when I don't even need it has been the real part that's hard for me.
Yeah.
Because I do need it, but I don't think I do, and I think that's been a big deal. From talking, from saying up front, hey, everybody, I'm going home early.
Yeah.
Because I'm not feeling well. That has been, or going to my pastors and elders and saying, if you have a key, good, because I'm going home.
Yeah.
The dishes need to be done. This needs to happen. Can you help my wife? Whatever it is.
Yeah.
Just kind of pouring those things out it's really vulnerable, because it's like people say, well, yeah, I don't want to do that, or it's really hard. And I don't want to, I got to go home too. I'm tired.
Yeah. What about my situation? I got to go to work tomorrow, Eric.
Yeah.
You're a pastor. You have nothing to do the rest of the week.
Yes, I don't. I have nothing to do.
I know. Surprised you're even, it's 9:00 and I'm surprised you're out of bed.
Yeah. It's been hard to motivate lately.
Yeah.
It's the summer, man. It's really hard.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's, do you feel like, in general, the vibe of the Village is you guys are like a big family. It's a big living room. It's a big, and in many ways, I suppose you might experience some of that. But then even the big family is complicated, right?
Big families
the kids
are complicated.
Don't do the dishes, and you got to tell them to help mom. And
right.
It's, do you ever, has it ever crossed your mind where you've gone, I wish I just was a megachurch pastor with an office and I just walked out the back and, into my SUV and drove away?
Yeah. I don't ever think about that. What I think about is, I want to be a pastor who gets to go and put in 35 hours of studying the Bible, and preparing and crafting a message.
Sure.
And really, because I enjoy it.
Yeah.
I enjoy the whole process. And it's probably one of the more favorite parts of my job. But because I have a smaller space of time to do that, I feel like sometimes I get more creative anxiety around sermon building because I have, 10 hours at max, to put this message together. And, I think a lot of people don't realize that it's not just about finding scripture. There's a lot of wrestling through your own life.
Right.
Because scripture convicts, and you want to be humbled by it before you bring it forward. So there's that element. But
then there's actually applying it to human beings in your church, not just telling them what it means, but
right.
Yeah.
So you're moving to that. But then there's this whole other section of you're doing public speaking. You're standing in front of people. There's delivery. And learning how to deliver is part of making a sermon. And I think when I deliver one, I'm like, oh yeah, that was a good delivery. I think the next time I work on a sermon, I'm like, there's no way I even know how to deliver. I don't know how to stand up in front of people and talk.
Right.
Like I have to go back through that process of how's this going to present? How am I going to, what am I going to emphasize? How do I emphasize it?
Yeah.
And then when you stand up in front of people and you're in that moment and you're emphasizing it and you look over at that person and they yawn or they roll their eyes or they whisper something.
Or they walk away.
Oh, they get up and walk out. You're like, wait, this was the best part of this message. You need to hear this. Why are you going to the bathroom?
Right. Or are you going to the bathroom? Are you just going home?
You're going home, right?
Do you do better with a big group or small group? I'm more comfortable with a big group where I'm unaware of individuals.
Yeah,
that's not what God gave me.
Yeah, no, he didn't give me that either. And now we've gone to 2 services. He's really reduced that. So I used to think that I would be better at a big group, and I am more comfortable in a big group.
Yeah.
But I watched this podcast talking about public speaking over vacation, and this one line stuck out. It said, when you walk in the room, you can choose, is the room going to control you, or are you going to control the room? And that actually killed my anxiety because I realized it's not about the size of the room. It's just about, am I going to be genuinely honest in my emotional expression, even if there's 3 people there?
Right.
And, and that has helped. It changed coming back because I was preaching to 25 in the evening service and about 30 in the morning services because so many people are on vacation. And it was great. I loved it. It was fun.
Yeah.
Because I was not really... I think part of it is I really find some value out of the packed crowd and people laughing at my jokes and engaging with me. And there's some identity there.
Right.
And power that you don't get a sense of when there's 25 and you tell a joke and one person in the corner laughs and everybody looks at them like, what's funny?
Right. Yeah, I don't know if it's, there is that for me, the identity thing, but I just become hyper aware of individuals and it distracts me.
Yes.
That happens. Like the little kid who's moving around, if there's, 100 people, I don't notice that kid. If there's 20, I notice that kid.
Yeah, you notice the kid.
And I'm like, what is going on with that kid? And I realize I'm talking, but I've been thinking about something else for the last 30 seconds while talking.
Yes.
And that's the strangest phenomena. I'm sure public speakers everywhere know what I'm talking about. But it's a very weird thing to think, I have been saying a thing that I believe I'm very convicted of while thinking about something else for a while. and then how do I expect these people to sit here and listen to me when I can't even listen to me while I'm talking?
Yeah, you lose where you're at.
You do lose
if you think that far ahead. This Sunday in the morning finished my sermon and I was, offering kind of the little thing about communion, and I ended it with saying, taking the bread and the juice and remembering what Christ has done.
Right.
And then I was explaining our sinner's chair, or our healing chair. And I said, and blah, 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 you could do this, this, and this. And then you can go sit in that chair and remember what Christ has done for you. I'm like, wait a minute.
That's not right.
But I was thinking about all the next things that needed to happen. And I just, my language got all mixed up. And I was like, oh.
So, well, never mind.
Yeah. So.
Do you, as a pastor, who are you most jealous of, and when does that come up for you?
Who am I most jealous of? Um, Gosh. So in what way?
Just any way. I mean, do you struggle with jealousy, like in like comparing? I mean, I mean, this could be like other churches or people who just don't have to have responsibilities like these, or I mean, whatever.
I don't think I'm jealous of people's like position. So I don't think, oh, like this person's over at this church and they have that position and I really would like that position. I think what I get jealous of is I don't hear a lot of outside like praise. So, but when I go around and talk to people, I talk to a lot of people who are in the Christian community.
Yeah.
And what I hear is, oh yeah, like I really like, Josh is like, his teaching's really good, or Chad over Second Mile, like I really like that. These are things I've heard recently.
Yeah.
Like that's really solid teaching, or the worship music is really good.
Right.
And you're like, so I am a little jealous of not them in particular, but jealous of the fact that these people are telling me, and I would like to hear that about my own community, but nobody comes up to me and says, your teaching is really solid. Like it's, I don't hear that.
Right.
And nobody says, oh, that's the reputation of the village or whatever.
Right.
And I don't think anybody tells Josh or Chad that outside of their community. I mean, outside people aren't coming and saying, hey, you're just amazing at what you do all the time. But I'm jealous of the praise. I don't know. That may sound weird to you. But
No, not at all. I get that. I was going to say I have a weird, like a distrust when I hear, because every once in a while, like actually last week, and this is good people, but said something about just the music here is just so great, There's something about my journey, like I just, when I hear that kind of stuff, I'm like, like I don't, like that's going to fail you. This isn't going to, it doesn't strike me as a good sign when somebody comes up, wow, powerful teaching, Pastor. I go,
right.
Oh, okay. We'll see how this goes. I don't know. It's there's something.
Right, because you're like, well, I'm going to disappoint you.
I'm going to disappoint you later because, like, okay, you like today, sure, but then wait till I say a thing you disagree with, or wait till you've come 5 times and it's no longer new and novel.
Or you were just not. You were sick, and the sermon you preached was, like, okay, that wasn't. You just didn't have it.
But I mean, have you ever had that experience where you go to, I mean, you visit churches, I do too, and you go for the first time somewhere and it's different and there's something refreshing. Mm-hmm. And you go, oh, wow, I like the way they did, Lord's Supper was different. And that was just really refreshing, or the way he talked about that. But then imagine you hunkered down and went there for 2 years and it's no longer different or refreshing. It's just, oh, that's just Pastor Todd. And, yeah, I don't know. I think something like inherently changes, like the novelty of something like that it can't last. It goes away. And so I'm really interested in people who aren't with us for that, for the novelty of it, or the fact that it's different than what they experienced, but people who are like, I love these people. I'm committed. I want to serve with you through thick and thin on the day that your sermon stinks, and on the day that the music is all off key. Right. That's when I want to be here then, Right. But it's always, I mean, compliments are nice. It's wonderful. And I have a hard time receiving compliments, but I do like them. Right.
I think we all do.
Yeah. I just don't know what to say. I'm like, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think the hard part for me, and maybe it's just, I get really frustrated with the way people analyze church. And so, but because I'm a pastor, when I talk to people outside of my own church, they analyze it on 2 things. Is what is the teaching like, and what's
speaking
the
and
worship?
The music.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
every time
they have good worship and they have good speaking, or the speaking's not great, but the worship's really cool, and then when they complain, it's odd to me there's a little bit of complaint about the speaking, but usually the complaint is, I could handle it, the music wasn't that great and the speaking wasn't great, but the community, like, was bad, and like we just couldn't be there.
And somebody hurt me, or there was a toxic thing. Rarely does anybody leave. They don't go like, you know what? The worship sets have just been real bland. Like, I'm out of here.
Right.
No, it's right. It is interesting, right? So then, like, if that's the case, why not look for a church based on community instead of worship and preaching?
Right.
Right.
Well, I kind of feel like what I like about the Village and what I've seen in people's life, if you go back to what we talked about, is that people, as they join the community and as they grow into it, start talking about the speaking and the worship as something that's gradually became more powerful to them.
Over time.
Yeah. Because all of a sudden they realize that it's speaking to them in the context of their growth and both from those places. And I think that's a powerful thing. I think sometimes when people come early on, I think it's less now this way, but they would be like, well, the preaching's kind of amateurish. The worship music's weird. You know, the people are weird. I mean, that's often, like, unless you are weird or you like strange, worship music, or you're willing to listen to an hour and 10-minute sermon, because that's how long they used to be, you didn't stick around.
Yeah.
Or you were found friends. You were hurting, and that was a place that seemed like people loved you.
Right.
But you kind of had to fit into that. I don't know. But yeah, jealousy, to go back to that, it's just compliments. I'm jealous of compliments.
Huh. Yeah.
I mean, I am sometimes in the middle of stress, jealous of people who are sitting in their office with an assistant answering their phone calls and
making $200,000 a year,
making more money or something like that. Yeah.
We just had a lady. We're sending our daughter to school and to a Christian school. This is new, and one of the administrators said to my wife, because we're filing for like an assistance program for pastors, and my wife kind of called because the money hadn't been knocked off the bill, and the lady's like, "Oh, you have to like apply for that. You can't just say you're a pastor." And then she kind of laughed and said, there are plenty of pastors who don't need assistance. And my wife was a little bit, I think, mildly like, oh, what's that about? But it's true. Like, I know from my past experience, like some of the pastors sending their kids there make way more than the other people, right?
Right.
And these administrators are aware of that. They know, like, just because you're a pastor doesn't mean you're
right,
like short on cash. So anyway, it's, of course, I think about how much I put in heart, mind, and soul, and then think like there's some people that just don't do that. I mean, or they don't have to do as much, and they just like life's just easy. Now that's not true.
No,
I don't know anything about their lives, but I'm saying that when the jealousy rises up,
sure,
it's like,
those are more the internal thoughts.
Yeah, and it, of course, that's just not the case, and that's not what it means to serve in my context. And when you're in a context where big people give big money, there's stressors, major stressors to that I'm aware of, and I'm not jealous of those.
Right. No, each one comes with its own.
There's
its
ups
own
and
burdens.
downs, major ups and downs.
Yeah. Now, I think the hard part about being a pastor is I don't know if people like. You can have a really good day. You can have this moments with God where you repent of your own sin. You see the vision that He's calling you to in different places, and you're excited. And the next day, the enemy, your congregation, even you, kind of crumple that very quickly.
Oh, sure.
And there's this deep discouragement that could this vision ever happen? Was this something really from God, or was this just my own aspiration?
My stupid idea.
Yeah, stupid idea, and you can lose hope so quickly as a pastor, where you're just like, yeah, why am I doing this? People will never move in the direction they're supposed to,
right?
And you can be very nihilist and very,
yeah, sure, yeah. I definitely. I mean, I suffer from a lot of. I'm discouraged a lot, and usually it's not anybody's particular like fault. It's just it is that spiritual battle, inner turmoil.
Yeah.
Just being. I was talking to our intern John, and he asked me something about, do you ever like get bitter at the people in the church? I think he was like, he tasted it, right? Like as a new intern, and he's working with people, and I think he was starting to feel a little bit of that, and I was like, like, oh no, like I hate to, but because so much of your life has been dedicated to these people and they're moving somewhere, and you've given yourself to God for this, and then you forget that God's the one doing the work, and you start to think like, that if that's not happening, it must be your fault. And then it's very easy to then just kind of turn it on people in your heart and be like, what's wrong with you? Like, and, which is not good. I mean I bet that, most pastors, as pristine as they come across, are dealing with this stuff, right? Like,
they are.
Because that's what happens with, you're a parent with 2 kids, and your kid's not becoming the person that you always wanted your kid to be. How many times have I had this discussion with people when I was in youth ministry? Like, I wanted my kid, all I wanted was for them not to be, like, I wanted them to honor women unlike I did when I was a kid. I invested in it. I did everything, and they don't.
Right.
Right. And just how, and then it makes you bitter toward them, and it makes you feel like a failure.
Yeah. So when you're in those moments of darkness of your ministry, like where you're trying, it's hard to get out of bed, or you're kind of feeling weighted down by the enemy or people, like where in Scripture do you, what's the go-to beginning to kind of walk with God out of these things? Like, where do you end up in Scripture usually?
I mean, usually when I'm really there, I end up in Psalms. I don't know, something about the Psalms.
Any particular one that you find?
It feels so cliche, but Psalm 40 has been huge for me. It's cliche just because you too, and all that.
That's a great psalm.
Yeah. Like waiting, I waited patiently for the Lord. He inclined and heard my cry. Just so much about, God's going to be the one that redeems and works. So that's been a big one for me, throughout my life. And then, I think for me, it's just hard to do is to believe that God is the one doing the work, and I can intellectually say it all day long. I can say it, I can preach it, but to practically live as if that is the case. And so just there's a lot of prayers for me when I'm in those places, and this happens a lot, is just this asking God to teach me, show me, help me see that he is actually doing good, and that it's not, and that I can rest in him. Those are hard to believe for me, and so that gets a lot of prayer time. That theme over and over again. I don't know. How about you?
Yeah, I think there's a number of places that I end up. I think I end up in, since I was a kid, in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and don't lean on your own understanding. In all your ways, He will acknowledge Him and He will make your path straight. So there's I always feel it's a very readjusting proverb for me. I'm kind of following that. I think Isaiah 55, the part where, are you weary? Are you thirsty? Come to the riverside. Like that. There's I am. This is who I am. That's a big part of it. Those two are ones that I end up going to a lot, of just resting in them. And oddly enough, 1 John 5, 11, 12, in this testimony that God has given us eternal life, and this life's in the Son. He has the Son as life. He is not the Son of God, is not life. That as a mantra for me is really powerful, because okay, I have the Son, I have life, regardless of all of this garbage. I've been given eternal life. I may not understand it, but I have it, and that I can hold on to. So those I begin with those, but I think one of the things that I've learned over the last year and a half, 2 years, is when I'm in this darkness, I just go get my journal, I go find a place that's quiet, and I just start praying journal-wise. I'm just Father, this is where I'm at. And I just tell Him everything. people should not look at my journal. All right. I mean, if you find it somewhere, don't pick it up.
Burn it.
Yeah, but it's just me pouring out my heart, and I try to listen to what God is saying and write that down so that I can go back and read it and say, oh, okay, I've been here before and God said something.
Right.
And that's been really helpful over the last 2 years.
Yeah.
To like kind of readjust.
Yeah.
But it's a discipline. Like, a lot of times I think I was listening to a podcast on the way here. I only got the first like 5 minutes because my phone wasn't working. But the guy was saying in the promo, like, we as pastors, we know how to tell people what to do.
Right.
And we're good at it. But we usually go to what works the easiest as pastors because we don't have a lot of margins. And that's not healthy. Like, we have to stop and go do it. Even if it means saying no to a meeting, saying no to somebody who thinks they need help, or not getting something done at the church that you really wanted to get done.
Sure.
And that's hard. I think sometimes it's harder for me to, like, when I think, hey, there's some projects at church I need to do. Like at the building, I can go do that. That's a tangible thing. Like, and it's hard to be like, okay, that can wait till next week, or someone else can do that.
Yeah. Sometimes those things are really rewarding because you can actually, well, in theory, see the result at the end. Except for sometimes you don't. Right.
Well, your sound booth, that was one.
That was one.
You worked on that.
Yeah, I got overwhelmed this past week because I wired up something and it didn't work.
Oh, no.
And so I was excited.
At the building?
At the building. I was excited for that to work. And not only did it not work, like, it like actively didn't work. It tripped a breaker. And I went, wow. Oh, perfect. Now I need to go back through that and fix it. And the wiring's on the roof and it's really stinking hot. And it was like such a sweaty, which is probably why I reversed a wire or something, because it was like, even I would go early in the morning and it was just, by the time I was done, I was sopping, it was just
right.
And anyway, and apparently I was getting sick, which I didn't realize because I felt like I was just getting very drained.
Did you get like strep or?
No, I don't know, just congestion and I mean,
just the regular things that are going around. So
yeah,
because you said you're on medication, so I thought,
no, well, yeah, just like trying to break up the congestion, if anything. But just kind of like sinus pressure, a little headache. And I think I was feeling that when I was up on the roof. Anyway, point is, I so badly wanted that to just work and look good and be done. And it still isn't. And that sort of little stuff just sort of like pokes at me too.
Yes.
And then there's some form of leak going on at the church it's a mystery. It's like, I have theories only.
Like roof leak? Or
well, I didn't think so. I thought toilet, but now I've come to it being roof, and then the rain didn't seem to affect it. So I'm starting to wonder if the air conditioner that seemed to be underperforming is if the coils are freezing and then it's draining, and that's where it's coming from. But this is a whole maze of stuff. And then I start so that isn't easily solved. And then I start going, like, I don't want to have to solve this. And hopefully somebody else is going to help figure that out. But anyway, those kind of things, like,
they weigh on you, and they'll be
in weird ways
when you're working on your sermon.
Yeah, well, right. I sat down to work on my sermon yesterday, and there's all sorts. Anyway, there's just stuff going on. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. I could not. I was sitting there. I had the time. There were various stressors from home and my aunt being in hospice, and these unsolved problems and stuff at work, and I just at the business here, and there's nothing of which I had to accomplish during that time. I had the available time.
Right.
It wasn't a time management issue. It was like a mind management issue. I could not. I couldn't like wrap my mind around what is God saying to His people. I just couldn't do it.
Right. And I think that's where young mothers and pastors of small churches in particular have the same kind of thing. It's not that they don't have time to take care of their kids. and get them into bed and do all the things that they need to do, is that they don't have mind space to do that.
Right.
And I think that's partly as pastors too. We, especially when we're small church pastors, where we have lots of different hats and lots of different places, that we have time to do all of it. It's not that there isn't time. It's that we don't have mind time, because each one of those things costs more usually. Yeah. And partly just the hat shifting costs you something. And you, as bivocational, I think have even an added burden.
Yeah, I mean, I'm torn on it because I think it's a burden and I think it's a gift.
Oh yeah, there's blessing to it.
Well, and part of the blessing is I think about if I'm really asking people in our church to have, like a job, a vocation, and a family, and this vibrant, active faith in Christ, then I'm asking them to do that.
Sure.
Like I'm asking them to, not that they should switch hats, but I'm asking them to be able to have like spiritual discernment and to be seeking God and thinking through these things and, on a mission in their workplace or however you want to put it.
Sure.
And they're going to have those, they're going to wrestle with that. Yeah. So if I didn't, I almost would feel weird about if all I did is just like, I've got my study time and I'm just in the zone, which, never would really be the case.
No, you're not going to have that.
But
speaking of someone who is not bivocational.
I know. It's not how it works. No, I wasn't always bivocational, so I remember. But I think being bivocational and having the stressors of, I actually think it's very healthy for me to have to think of profit and ministry. Like,
sure.
I mean, because that's where our people are at, is dealing with that kind of, like, do I make enough money? Like, that can be a worldly obsession, but it's also a reality that you need to think about.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, the only pushback I'd have on that is the burden they don't have of protecting a flock.
Yeah. That is different.
Of feeling the
responsibility,
the weight. Attack.
Yeah, that too.
They don't have that. So they're at the same levels.
Right.
And so that's where I think it affects the mind space, where you stare.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I don't have it.
Yeah. Sure. Well, Eric,
I think
we've had a podcast. So
thank you for going this way with me for once.
You're welcome.
It.
For once. You're welcome.
Sorry, I didn't mean that.
Yeah.
That way. But
see you next week.